Have you ever felt like you're caught in a cycle you can't break free from? Maybe it's always being the one everyone calls for help, or putting your dreams on hold for others, or stretching yourself so thin until there's nothing left to give. Here's a truth that might surprise you: it's actually easier to stand firm in a new boundary than to keep wrestling with old patterns that drain your spirit. Let's begin. Think about a river. Over time, it carves a deep path through the earth. That's like a pattern in our lives. Whether it's always saying yes when we want to say no, taking on everyone else's problems as our own, or putting ourselves last. These patterns are etched deep, like that riverbed. Dears, setting a boundary is like building a dam or changing the river's course. At first, it feels almost impossible. The water, or in our case, old habits, want to follow its familiar path. But once you build that dam, once you establish that firm boundary, it's actually easier to maintain things than to let the water keep eroding the same old path. Sisters, here's another way to see it. For some of you, it's become easier to keep working through lunch breaks because that's what everyone does, than to clearly state, "I'm taking my lunch hour to refresh and recharge." For the caregiver, it's easier to keep dropping everything when family members have minor emergencies than to establish clear times when you're available to help and when you aren't. For the student, you're stuck pulling all-nighters because friends want to socialize instead of setting and sticking to firm study hours. For the village woman, you choose to keep lending money to relatives without repayment rather than establishing clear lending boundaries. And for that city professional, you continue to answer work emails at midnight or on weekends rather than set clear work-life boundaries. Dear ones, I know establishing a new boundary feels uncomfortable at first, but believe me, maintaining boundaries becomes easier than constantly dealing with the stress and strain of broken boundaries. It's like installing a door with a good lock versus constantly chasing after people who have wandered into your space uninvited. Sisters, when we don't have clear boundaries, life can feel like a bothersome, endless cycle. We find ourselves saying yes when our heart screams no. We carry around guilt for taking time for ourselves. We stretch our resources, whether it's our time, money, or energy, until we're completely depleted. Can't you see? We've put everyone else's needs before our own, then wonder why we feel so resentful and depleted at the end of the day. But imagine, dear ones, if instead of a constant cycle of yes, you could honor your limits with the same grace you offer to others. Imagine if your time became as valuable as the time you give to others. Picture a life where your peace became as important as others' convenience, and your needs became as worthy as everyone else's demands. Sisters, please understand that this isn't about building walls, it's about creating healthy doors that you can choose to open or close. Think about your own home, where a door isn't a barrier, it's protection. It lets in the light and love when opened, but also gives you the sacred space to rest, to breathe, to simply be. When someone knocks, you have the right to ask, "Who is it?" You have the right to say, "Not now." You have the right to open that door on your own terms. Dears, many of us were taught that being a good woman meant keeping our doors wide open, at all times, for everyone. We were taught that closing the door was selfish, that setting limits was unkind. But sisters, I ask you, how can we truly serve others when we're exhausted from leaving our doors unguarded? How can we pour from an empty vessel? You can't. So let me suggest this. Start small. Begin with one boundary that feels manageable. Maybe it's saying, "I'll think about it," instead of an immediate yes, or it could be learning to say, "I can help tomorrow," or the weekend, instead of dropping everything right then and there. Now realize, dears, that when you first set a boundary, some people might resist. They've grown used to your door always being open to them. But stand firm. With each small step, with each gentle no, with each moment you honor your own needs first, you're creating a new pattern, one of self-respect and inner peace for you, and self-sufficiency and self-reliance for the other person. Dears, know this for a truth, and that's the greatest gift we can give our loved ones are boundaries. Can't you see that when we honor our boundaries, we create a ripple effect of healthy relationships? Our children learn to value themselves by watching us value ourselves. Our sisters find courage in our courage. Our friends discover their strength when we step back and let them stand in their own power, face their own challenges, and write their own stories. Today, I invite you to take that first brave step. Choose one small boundary. Guard it gently, but firmly. Let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Trusting that with each passing day, with each time you honor your limits, you're not just changing your own life, you're healing patterns that aren't healthy for you or the other person. Dears, you're creating a new way of being, where loving and supporting others doesn't mean over-sacrificing and losing yourself. Your boundaries are your right, so embrace them without apology, protect them with devotion, and marvel as your true self emerges. Until next time.